This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should, too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida.
This is
Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio. Very happy to have you here, my friend. Today, a review of Carnival Glory. Also, staff writer Richard Sims is back after a couple of weeks hiatus. Actually, it was my fault because I was traveling. So we'll jump right to him now. Hey, Richard.
Hey, Doug.
So we start with a scary situation, which could have been a whole lot worse.
This one is kind of crazy, if I'm being honest. Apparently, a 35-year-old man from South Africa was hired to work on the Norwegian Encore. According to an FBI report, he started his new job on Sunday when the ship set sail from Seattle on an Alaskan voyage, because we are now in Alaska season. But that night, he was caught trying to deploy a lifeboat. So, he was taken to the medical center for evaluation. When he got there, he tried to escape by attacking a security guard and a nurse. And then he ran into another section of the medical center. And I guess he had a pair of scissors, and he stabbed a woman who was there to be examined for, something, probably, seasickness or something. I don't really know. He was ultimately taken to the brig, and then when the ship arrived in Juneau, he was arrested. A federal district judge will decide what happens to him next, but if he's convicted of all the various charges, then he could be facing a whole lot of jail time and very, very big fees for his, I guess you'd call it a stunt. I don't know what you'd call it. I mean, it sounds as if, he intended to get on the ship and then take a lifeboat and go who knows where. But ultimately, he did some damage and put himself in a really bad situation.
And sticking with NCL, we got a much happier story that rolls around every year around this time.
I think you'd agree with me that teachers are underappreciated and underpaid. I mean, I think everybody would pretty much agree on that. So I really love that for the 5th year in a row, Norwegian is celebrating Teacher Appreciation Week with their Giving Joy contest. This allows people to nominate their favorite teacher, and they can do it from now until June 7th. They can just go on NCL's site, and all the information is there. The top vote getters are given a free cruise. In this case, the top 20 vote getters will be invited on a 2-night inaugural sailing on the Norwegian Agua out of Boston, and the top 5 vote getters will be invited to the ship's christening and its inaugural sailing out of Miami. Well, this is something that I don't remember hearing about a lot in the past, but now there tends to be more than one inaugural sailing. Like, they basically call it an inaugural sailing every time a new ship sails out of a new port. So here, there's going to be one inaugural sailing out of Boston that's a 2-nighter, and then there's another sailing out of Miami. Anyway, they're giving away cruises to teachers who receive the most votes. But more than that, they also donate money to the schools, and it's just a really amazing program. This is, like I said, this is its 5th year, but this year they're doing something completely different, which they have announced that now they are going to be having a teacher cruise discount that's available to all active teachers and principals and school employees, as long as they can, prove that they have this job. It also covers certain types of college teachers. It's a 5% discount and a $50 onboard credit. So, we've long had several of the cruise lines, with Carnival having led the way in this department, have done, military discounts and things like that. But I really love that this is being introduced for teachers as well, because like I said, I mean, we all know teachers and they put up with a lot, especially in the modern world. And so to see them getting this kind of reward is kind of awesome. If people want more information on this, whether they want to nominate somebody or they want more information about the teacher discount, we've got the information on Cruise Radio. They can also head on over to Norwegian's website and find out all about it there.
And this week is Teacher Appreciation Week. So if you're listening and you're a teacher or an administrator, thank you so much. All right, this next story is a cautionary tale.
Maybe that the early bird not only gets the worm, but also doesn't miss the ship. Unfortunately, Richard Gordon and his wife Claudine were late in getting back to Norwegian Viva, and they wound up being left behind. The couple, both of whom were in their 80s, had arranged for an independent shore excursion while the ship was docked in Spain. Now, we've talked about this before. There is nothing wrong with booking an independent shore excursion, but it can be problematic in that when you book an independent shore excursion as opposed to one through the ship does not know where you are, and they that can be very problematic. That's what happened here. So apparently there were heavy rains, and that caused a delay in their getting back. They called a relative who was on board the ship and said, "Hey, we're on our way back, but we are going to be late." They say they were about a half hour late. Norwegian says they were about an hour late. Unfortunately, no matter how late they were, they missed the ship. It had a schedule to keep, and it ended up having to leave them. The good news is that their daughter, who was back in Utah, was able to help them book and catch a flight to the ship's next port, where they were able to rejoin the cruise the next day. I'm hoping they got her some really awesome souvenir for helping, like a t-shirt that says, "My parents missed the ship and all I got was this lousy t-shirt," or something like that. Anyway, it's worth noting that the Gordons aren't cruise newbies. It's not like this is a case of somebody who didn't know that they might miss the ship in these circumstances. In fact, they've been on like 30 cruises over the years. So this can happen to anyone. Remember, always, 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 always leave yourself plenty of time to get back to the ship when on an independent shore excursion, because the ships will not wait if you aren't back. Now, like I said, when you're on a shore excursion through the ship, they're unless there's something really extreme, they're going to wait for you because they know where you are, and you're probably not by yourself. You're probably with like 20 or 30 other passengers who are on the same shore excursion. So, they're not going to leave all of you behind. Just be aware of the onboard time, be back in plenty of time, and don't let this happen to you.
Not sure if you caught the pushback on this one. They were saying the couple was elderly and the ship should have waited.
If these had been 30-year-olds, I bet the backlash would have been exactly the opposite. And they would have been, "Oh, these self-centered millennials, it doesn't matter what the age of the people is. Yes, we naturally have a tendency to look at something like this and say, "Oh, these people were 80, their poor little people couldn't get back." No, like I know 80-year-olds who sail all the time, and they know you've got to be back at the ship. So
Absolutely.
No backlash. We don't accept it.
And it sounds like some officials in Hawaii aren't too thrilled with the captain of Celebrity Edge right now.
And with what sounds like pretty good reason, to be honest. Footage has surfaced which seems to show that the ship got really dangerously close to the Hawaiian coastline. The area the ship was in, which I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce, but it's known as the Naipal Coast. And it's one of the most famous and beautiful areas in Hawaii. Because of that, the local government has imposed some pretty strict guidelines regarding commercial activities in the area. In fact, one of them basically specifically says ships carrying 50 or more passengers have to stay at least 3,000 feet away from the shore. And, again, for good reason. This is a protected area. Well, according to eyewitnesses, the Celebrity Edge was only around 1,000 feet from shore, maybe even less. Some said it was anchored in like 43-foot water, which is incredibly shallow. One of the concerns was that the engine churns up sand. If you've ever been, no matter where you are, like I've seen it when I was at private islands, when the engine gets going and the water's shallow enough, it stirs up a lot of sand on the bottom of the ocean. You can see it. It creates kind of a cool pattern on the surface of the water, to be honest. But in a situation like this, it's a problem because that sand, when you're that close to shore, then settles on coral reefs, and they need more. It blocks out the sun, and they need the sun to survive. So it actually ends up killing some of the coral. After receiving several reports, the Department of Land and Natural Resources, the State Department of Transportation, and the U.S. Coast Guard, they've all launched an investigation into the situation. As we are recording this, Celebrity has not yet commented on the situation. I'm sure, basically they're probably going to say, "Whoops, sorry," and I would assume they'll probably have to pay a fine of some sort. But definitely Definitely not something that they should be doing for, the obvious reasons.
Those environmental classes you're taking at the Woodstock Community Center really paying off, man.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I'm learning. It's also worth noting. I mean, thank God nothing bad happened here. But it was, the Costa Concordia. The reason that it hit the rocks and stuff was because it was too close to the shore. There's a reason these things are put in place. Sometimes it's environmental protection, sometimes it's safety, sometimes it's both. And Doug, a little bit of breaking news. I have just been handed a note from our fact checker saying it is the Nepali coast. So, as usual, as regular listeners know, I have brutalized yet another name. So it is the Nepali coast in Hawaii, and I apologize for getting that wrong.
Was wondering if you were going to catch that. And an odd story out of Japan.
Doug, this one is truly baffling. So the MSC Bellissima was docked in Japan when someone noticed a dude basically shimmying down a rope before falling into the water. He swam ashore and was, as you might expect, arrested. And at first, it was sort of assumed that he was trying to enter Japan illegally. But that's where it gets weird. There's absolutely no explanation for why he did what he did. Sure, we've heard of people jumping off ships before or falling while doing something dumb or, trying to get into a country they shouldn't be. But in this case, the ship was docked. The gangway was deployed. There's absolutely no reason he couldn't have just walked off if that's what he wanted to do. And passengers had just boarded the ship. Like it was embarkation day. So there's no reason he needed to like climb down a rope and sneak into Japan. It just, because they were already there. It literally makes no sense. And I don't know, maybe we'll eventually get more details about this. And if so, we will happily pass them along, because the last thing we want to do is leave all of you feeling as confused as I feel right now.
Okay, so to unpack this, the man didn't walk down the gangway. Instead, he went down a rope on the side of the ship, fell in the water, and here we are.
That is exactly my understanding of this story, and that is why it makes no sense. Like, if you've decided, you got on the boat and you're like, you know what? I don't think they have a very good food selection on here, or for whatever reason you wanted to get off, all you had to do was go down and walk off the ship. There's nothing stopping you.
All right, listener email comes from Laura. Email yours in to doug@cruiseradio.net. Laura's looking to book the brilliant lady from New York to L.A., and she said it's no longer listed on the website. She wants to know why, because it only went on sale a couple of days ago, and is the sailing canceled?
I happen to know the answer to this right off the top of my head, because earlier this morning I was on with Virgin Voyages, because Brilliant Lady is going to be the first Virgin ship to sail out of New York City. And as you know, that's my home port. So I was very excited about this. I booked a couple of staterooms for the September 5th sailing. By the way, that's September 5th of 2025. So I've now booked 2 2025 cruises already. But as I was talking to them, I was saying that I assumed they were extremely busy because a bunch of these new sailings on the Brilliant Lady had rolled out today. And the rep told me that the sailing that's being referenced here that Laura's talking about, which is the first time a Virgin ship has gone through the Panama Canal, sold out. Not only sold out, but sold out in like a matter of a couple of hours. So that's why it is showing up on the ship as not on the site as not available. It's not that the cruise has been canceled. It's that it was so popular that it sold out almost immediately. So, I'm kind of glad that I literally woke up this morning having been counting down for the last few days to get passage on my ship, because I also think that the Brilliant Lady sailing out of New York is going to be an extremely popular one. They're only doing it for like 5 sailings. The first one is an inaugural sailing that is quite a bit more expensive than the others. I'm not going on the first one. I went on one a couple weeks later. It's also going to be popular because not only is it the first Virgin Voyage sailing out of New York, but it's also a 5-night cruise. And as we've talked about before, when you sail out of New York, it's very rare to find a 4 or 5-night sailing. They tend to be a week or longer. So the fact that it's both their first time sailing out of New York, it's a brand new ship, and it's a 5-night sailing is going to make that really popular. So if you do happen to be interested in that, or any of the other brilliant lady sailings that they've just announced, I would kind of hop on that because they are selling like the proverbial hotcakes.
All right, staff writer Richard Sims, as always, thank you.
Have a question or a comment for the show? Yeah! Send an email or voice memo to doug@cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
Back in March, Brandon took an 8-night cruise aboard Carnival Glory. Now, do realize the ship has got into dry dock since our interview. Not a lot has changed. Everything is pretty much consistent, aside from like adding some USB plugs and stuff into the cabins. Anyway, Brandon took an 8-night cruise out of New Orleans on Carnival Glory, and he's here to talk all about it. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, man. Excited to talk about Carnival Glory. It's been a minute since we have actually talked about this ship. I think actually you may be the first one since the cruise industry restarted that we review Carnival Glory. So excited to hear about this. Before we get to the ship itself, though, as we always do, we're going to take a step back. Give me some pre-cruise thoughts. What made you want to take this 8-night on Carnival Glory?
I just got off the celebration in Halloween, and it's my cousin who usually cruises with me. It was his first cruise back, so I couldn't book one until I got back. And then by the time that got done, it was like 60 days out, and I was kind of I had to cruise by February, and then like by then I was kind of scrambling to find something, and really just couldn't find anything that I fell in love with. I even looked at other cruise lines, but I ended up going with this one because it had the extra day. My cousin likes beaches, so it was supposed to be a sunny, like relaxing type of cruise with no stress because it is a drivable port.
Very good. Now you live in Georgia. Did you do any pre-cruise time before you sailed out of New Orleans? I mean, it's a pretty fun city.
Yeah, it was actually like Mardi Gras was going on, so we just drove down and did the like Bourbon Street thing. So that was actually one of the selling points, was to at least be able to walk down Bourbon Street. Wow. I didn't realize Mardi Gras was going on during that time, but so it was cool to be able to say I did the Mardi Gras thing.
Yeah, awesome, very cool. So you go to embark Carnival Glory. How was an embarkation process in New Orleans?
It was a smooth process. One big thing is I did, do the official parking, and it was more expensive. It was about $25 a day. But with Mardi Gras going on and unsure from the safety side of things, it was a no-brainer to do the parking, and that was the right call because that was a breeze. And another thing that we had an incident last time where my cousin had lost his passport, and we didn't realize it until we was about to board the ship. So I printed off a copy of a birth certificate and brought that with me. So that might be a tip for everybody to use because, since you can't get on with the birth certificate, that way if somebody lost their passport, we could still get on the ship. It was a pretty smooth process. One kind of odd thing was when they were calling people, instead of going like A1, A2, and A3, they just called all diamonds and platinum people. So that kind of made for a little bit of a cattle call. Overall, it was a smooth process, nothing of note really, but the way they call people was a little bit strange.
Yeah, probably a good choice of picking that, preferred parking lot because New Orleans is known for some car break-ins, even at the preferred lots sometimes. So yeah, smart choice there.
Yeah, because I think the off-site stuff would have been like $17 for a day, and this was $25 a day. But just having the satisfaction and not having to deal with Ubers and Lyfts and buses and stuff like that was a no-brainer. Plus, my truck almost got stuck in the parking lot in New Orleans the day before. So having, like forest cars around me. So that was another thing not to worry about getting stuck or anything like that.
Yeah, certainly. How long did it take you from curb to ship, would you say?
I get there early. I'm one of those that gets there early, so I was ready before they were ready to call. So I was probably sitting down waiting for them to call me in 10 minutes or something like that. It was and you could actually see the ship. It was a very small walk to get from the parking deck to the ship.
Once you walk on board Carnival Glory, what was your first impressions?
I've did so many Carnival cruises that nothing major really stuck out. You do have the taller elevators with like the glass elevators and stuff. But probably, I guess the biggest thing was, I'm used to the big ships. And when I see, your poor deck is on 9 and your entertainment starts on 3, that was kind of the biggest thing. It just hit me that this is a smaller ship because the poor deck is on 9, where it's like, 16 on the Celebration or something like that.
On this 8-night cruise, what kind of stateroom did you book, and what did you think of it throughout the 8 nights?
Something that I don't think I've ever heard anybody say on your podcast is that I like to go cheap on cruises and save money. And, I can't be in the minority in that, but nobody really talks about that. But because we booked so late, it was about 60 days out when we booked late. And one benefit of this smaller ship is that, like I said, your nighttime entertainment was on 3, your main pool deck is on 9. So I was like, well, even if they stick me on deck 1, I'm still going to be within walking distance to the nighttime stuff. And it was going to be $200 to $300 more per person just to get a specific inside room. So I ended up just doing the guaranteed room. And of course, they stuck me on deck 1 all the way as far as you could go. But because I had done my research and knew that I was still okay from a walking distance, it actually worked out great. And we had a good location because most of the stuff at 9 was on 3 and 4, and it was on our side of the ship.
So you said you were pretty far up there, but did you have any noise issues like top or bottom or left or right of your cabin?
If I did, I slept through it. But yeah, there was no issues then. No issues there.
That ship is 20 plus years old. Could you tell how old it was when you were on?
Not really. Like the cosmetics of it was in good shape. Like the carpet, the walls and stuff like that. The only even thing I even noticed was the elevator door was a little bit kind of ratty. But as far as the core of the ship, I thought it was in really good shape, and it is scheduled to go to the dry dock within a couple of weeks now. I think late March it starts the dry dock process. I have a magnetic shelf. Everybody knows about the wall hooks, but I bought me a magnetic shelf, and it helps in bigger things, so that was a plus.
Let's talk about dining now on this 8-night cruise, and we'll start at the top at the Lido area, the buffet. How was your experience in there throughout the 8 nights?
I'm used to the Celebration class where you have so many options for lunch. And so I was worried about that, but that ended up not being as big of a deal. I got the guy's barbecue. Well, it's not called guy's barbecue. It's called old-fashioned barbecue, and the guy's burger. So there was less options, but the actual buffet, I didn't eat much food at the buffet, but I did the little cakes they got a lot. That was a highlight. That kind of took the place of the gelato. But the actual buffet, I didn't eat too much other than just like for breakfast. They had the omelets, which were still good.
The upstairs area, you were mentioning it's called old-fashioned barbecue. Is it basically the same as Guy's?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, they actually have the Guy's barbecue sauce, the same as you see in the store. But yeah, I mean, it tasted the same. I was actually, I had lower expectations for the barbecue because there's a lot of good barbecue where I live. But yeah, I mean, it was the same. They had 3 choices. The chicken was the least good, but the pork and the pork butt were really good, and his barbecue sauce helped it. But yeah, I think it's the same thing. It just don't have the name.
How about outside of the buffet area, like the Guy's Burger joint and the Blue Iguana? Pretty solid and up to quality?
Yeah, I mean, those were standard for what you would see. Of course, the Guy's, the good fries from a couple years ago, for us, the Guy's burger, the good fries don't seem to be coming back. But yeah, and there wasn't a lot of options. Like there's a sushi place inside the buffet, which I think that probably should have been turned into like the Mongolian wok thing to give another option. Mm-hmm. But that was kind of, and there was a deli. That was one unique thing, was there's like a little deli thing where you get sandwiches at. There's about 12 different types of sandwiches. And that was a pretty popular thing. You saw a line there a lot because it was something a little bit different.
On those Conquest class ships, is the deli like a window as you're walking into the Lido?
Yeah, it's kind of like they cook it like behind. Yeah, It's kind of like a window, and there's one on each side.
Yeah.
And that's where they do the omelets. One side is a paid sushi thing, and then the other side is the deli.
How about the main dining room? What time dining did you have, and how was the food in there?
That was one of the highlights where I did the anytime dining, and looking back, I probably should have did the traditional. This was the new main dining room menu. It's the second time I've had it, and that was probably one of the highlights of the entire ship was the main dining room menu. I thought it was really excellent. There was just a lot of, I'm a pretty picky eater, and there was a lot of stuff to pick from, and we got about 2 things each night, and there was never an issue on finding something, and it was consistent. But one big thing, the wait times in the app was long. It would say an hour and a half, and it might be 20 minutes. It would say 20 minutes, and it might be 40. And so you was pretty much just guessing whenever you checked in on the app, and that made it kind of annoying to try to plan your day because you didn't know. Like there was one time where it said 10 minutes. We hurried up and got upstairs, and it ended up being a 40-minute wait. So, I don't know. I've never seen that where the app's been long that much, but it was.
Most of the ships I've been on recently and have had reviews on recently with Carnival, it's all been like, within 10 minutes or so. It's been pretty accurate. So up to 40 is quite interesting.
Yeah, and if you're 10 or even 20 minutes off, it's not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. But when you're it was weird. Like you would go to check in. Like there were times there was one night I went to check in as soon as you could, and it said a 2-hour wait.
Jeez.
And then, of course, it wasn't a 2-hour wait. Mm-hmm. But another thing about the dining, and this is a small thing, but it's so easily corrected, is, if you go to like a Chili's or an Applebee's, the waiter will come up and say, "Hey, I'm so-and-so, I will be your server today." But they no longer do that on Carnival. They don't introduce themselves, and they kind of just come up and ask what you want. And I don't think just take 1 minute to introduce yourself to start off with. I think it's a very easy thing that should be corrected. And like I said, and it's a small thing, but like just taking, 30 seconds to introduce yourself is, I think, can be done. And they actually had somebody when you left the main dining room a couple of nights, she was taking surveys and stuff. So that was one of the things that I told her was because that's something that you can easily fix. Yeah,
no, I agree 100%. You should at least know your server's name if they're going to be serving you throughout the evening.
And just in general, you just don't get the friendly service like you would on the traditional dining. So that's a decision you have to decide for yourself, which is more important.
So,
the other thing too was that they were empty seats. So kind of like you see at restaurants on land, when you see a wait time and then you go in the dining room and there's 25% of the seats empty, it tells you there's probably a staffing issue somewhere along the way.
Yeah, you can see the writing on the wall there for sure.
Yeah.
That or
another note was when they did they do the show times and stuff like that where the waiters dance and stuff. It was more of people singing in the dining room instead of the waiters dancing. There was only about 2 nights where they did the showtime where it involved the waiters. The other time it was like a solo singer. So I thought that was a little strange. I don't know if that's a company-wide thing or just on this ship or what.
How about entertainment for your 8 nights? How was it, and what did you think of it throughout the week?
The entertainment was a mixed bag. To me, when I think of a Carnival cruise, it starts with the cruise director. Some people, it doesn't matter, but to me, it starts with the cruise director. And he was, my personal opinion, was as bad as it gets. I didn't really see anything he did at even a below average level. So there were times the entertainment was good, but from the cruise director's standpoint, it really, I was not impressed with him. But maybe I'm comparing him to Lee Mason as well. Maybe that's unfairly, but not as much going on out after like 10 o'clock. It was kind of the comedy and karaoke kind of weirdly saved the day as far as the entertainment side. As far as, they still had the main shows and stuff, but your secondary entertainment, like after 10 o'clock, a little bit early, the karaoke and comedy kind of saved the day. And one kind of odd thing that you'll appreciate. They did karaoke every night from 7 to 9, and they did not have Friends in Low Places.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, like we heard that, I was like, "There's no way that's true." And we asked, but then they had like a couple of Ray Stevens songs that my cousin sung, but just not having Friends in Low Places was like. But then they had the dance, so I thought that was strange. The main theater where they have the night shows is excellent. It's like a 3-decker thing. It's on deck 3, 4, and 5, and the areas on 4 and 5 are good views. It's a great theater. And another thing about the cruise director, if you're coming in the summertime, there's an amazing cruise director that will be on the way. Her name is Gabby, and she worked under Lee on the Celebration and stuff. So she's going to be one of the best cruise directors in the industry, I would project, and she will be there starting in May. So there's some good news coming from that side of things.
The sea days you had, as far as crowds and congestion by the pool, in the buffet area, all of that.
The sea days, you kind of have to start that with the weather. We had really bad weather on this trip. Like, for example, it rained out the sail-away party. So there was a couple of sea days. It was odd in that the cheer hogs were inside instead of outside. You know, the weather was bad the first couple of days where you kind of just had to do stuff inside, and the weather got good the last 2 days. But the crowds there was a crowd on deck 3. That's where they had like the little trivia contest and things like that. And that's where most of the seating was. So it got crowded on there. You really couldn't find a seat. So you pretty much had to stand up if you wanted to a lot of the events and stuff on sea days. As far as the entertainment, it was a small fun staff. There was only a limited number. I don't know how many, there's maybe like 4 people in the fun staff. And the best one, her name was Chris, from Columbia. She got sick, and they had to get like the DJ to cover some of the fun staff duties. And then there was another singer that did the band on deck 3. She got sick as well and didn't return, and they didn't really have a replacement for her.
How about the casino? I know the casino is right there off the promenade, and sometimes it can be quite smoky. How was it on this one, the smoke situation in and around it?
I believe it was non-smoking. Pretty sure it was, because I didn't smell smoke. I don't think it was allowed. It's in a little bit of an unusual place, and it's very small. So as a Carnival stockholder, I would expect they would be mad about that. It was very small, but I believe it was smoke-free.
I don't know if it's 100% smoke-free. I know that you can only, how people used to sit there and smoke at the bar. You can't do that any longer. You have to be in front of a game to actually be smoking. So that could have pushed a lot of people outside too, you know?
And there's a music stage inside the casino, and they had some live music there. So that was a little unusual. There's also on deck 3, where they have the live music at, is right beside guest services. And I felt so sorry for the guest service people, like fielding complaints while like a rock band is playing and not able to hear. So that was kind of, I felt sorry for them, because you had to hear complaints and you couldn't really hear what they were saying for the noise.
Yeah, that's a funky design that actually both the Fantasy class and the Conquest class ships have, is that guest service is right there, basically like a stone's throw away from the performers.
And a little more like there was a great special entertainer. His name was Marcus Anthony, who's been on several Carnival ships. He's as good as it gets from the entertainment side of things. He
does a lot of like R&B and rhythm, soul, all that, right?
Yeah, he's one of those guys that even though he didn't, really play the type of music I personally like, he was just so charismatic. He had everybody hooked on the first song. He's one of those. If you remember back to some more entertainment, they used to have what called like the Sexiest Man contest or whatever it was called. And they have what they called the Legend of Lido. And that's kind of the replacement for those. And I ended up making friends with a girl, and she ended up winning and dominating it. So that was the highlight for us, the daytime entertainment. It's called Legend of Lido. It's one of the funnest things you'll see. It kind of replaced those old Sexy Legs contests and all that kind of stuff.
Let's talk about the ports of call on this 8-night cruise. What we'll do here is give us your first port of call, the highlight for you. Then you can just move to the next one.
The ports were, the first one was Key West. We kind of just walked around and went to the southernmost point, and I ate some key lime pie from Kermit's. The weather wasn't the best in the world. It was also my first time ever seeing a celebrity on a cruise ship. I saw the actor Ron Perlman, who was on Sons of Anarchy. He was walking around the port, so I saw him.
Oh, cool.
So that was neat. Unfortunately, like a lot of people, I think Richard said it happened to him too. Half Moon Cay was canceled because of weather, and that was everybody's best port, and it got canceled, which was really disappointing. But I kind of knew it was coming based off the weather we had. Freeport, we did a fun. It's the only excursion I did. It was an all-inclusive light Viva Wyndham excursion. It was about $130, included transportation, all you can eat and drink, and it was more of an upscale type thing. I believe this was officially through Carnival. I think it's more on the upscale side of things, and it's at the hotel, and it was really nice. I would definitely recommend it for anybody that's going to Freeport.
What was the beach called?
All-inclusive, like Viva Wyndham Resort. And the good thing about it is that it's actually a hotel, so they don't just do cruise stuff. So they're already like there. So so that was, and it's a shorter drive too. So it was an easy drive, and that was my cousin's highlight because had the all you can drink alcohol. That was one of his probably his highlight for the entire cruise. And then the last one was Nassau. They canceled all the beaches. So when you cancel the beaches in Nassau, you don't really get a whole lot else to do. So I kind of just walked around and saw the new port area, and about an hour and a half later got back on the ship.
Gotcha. What did you think of that new port area?
It's kind of like putting lipstick on a pig. It helped it, but there's still wasn't really much to buy or do.
After Nassau, you make your way probably a sea day or two, then back to New Orleans. You said the weather cleared up a little bit on the way back.
Yeah, it was at least nice enough to stay outside. But I think it did get to like 75. I think toward the end. So yeah, it cleared up on the way back.
Gotcha. So you make your way back. So I'm trying to think. So going through up the Mississippi River in this case, you reach the Mississippi like around dinner time or shortly thereafter, don't you?
Yeah, but when we did that, it was pouring down rain and windy, and that's when they canceled the Accelerate party. So I went outside for a few seconds to take pictures, but you pretty much just looked at it from the glass. It was neat to see, but it didn't quite work out the way I hoped.
So you make your way back to the port of New Orleans. How was your debark process? Because Carnival, if I'm not mistaken, or at least they're starting to roll out, they have a different way to do the debark. It's like app-based now, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, they did the digital like disembarked. No, it was a quick process. One good thing about staying on deck one, we only had to go up to deck 3 to get off, so we just quickly carried our luggage. And we always do the self-assist because it gets easier. And out in 5-10 minutes was probably in my truck in 5 minutes. It was a very quick process.
You make your way back home after this 8-night cruise, and you're looking back on it. Yeah, you already gave us a couple of tips, like the magnetic shelves and to bring maybe a power extender or an extra port there. Any other tips you could offer anyone sailing either Carnival Glory or heading down to the Bahamas area?
I would say do your research on the ship and know what type of cruiser you are. I am what I call myself a ship snob, and I'm used to the newer ships. And for me, the ship didn't really work. And I personally would not go back on this class of ships unless it was special circumstances. So, if you're, there wasn't as much going on at night and stuff. So just kind of be prepared for that if you're used to the newer class where you have a bunch of options on what to do.
To put a bow on this interview here, Brandon, what are your final thoughts of Carnival Glory?
The ship was not for me, and it may be for some people, but the layout on the ship is kind of all wrong to me. There's a lot of smaller details, which I won't really get into here, but, there's just a lot of wasted space on the ship, like a crazy amount of wasted space. Like, there was entire venues not used all week, like in prime real estate. They still print the photos off. You can't look at photos online. Like, you can't look at photos on the app. So, I think there's just a lot of, the ship personally is not for me. I would stick to the newer ships.
Before we hop here, Brandon, I've been following you on social media for the past 5 years or so, and I noticed you always have some videos out there or a lot of photos and things. Did you do any videos for this sailing?
I did, yeah. I'm starting I'm on about day 3 or 4 of my YouTube videos, which is Bubba's Cruising Concerts. You can find them there. It's Bubba's Cruising Concerts. I also do a lot of country music stuff. As a small content creator, it can get frustrating when the only way to get views is to be negative, clickbait headlines. And I love cruising, and I don't want to talk bad about stuff just to get views. So I try to keep it positive.
We'll also link to his channel in the show notes at cruiseradio.net. It was good talking to you, my friend. Thank you so much for giving us this review of your 8-night sailing on Carnival Glory.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for all the help.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,